What's up, guys? At the beginning of the year, I gave a survey starting with some contact data like parent email, and then I had multiple choice questions about your computer science background, which Google Forms can turn into lovely pie charts. If it has more than a few choices, they might give you a bar, but it's the same idea. And then at the end, I had some just for fun questions about like your favorite movie, and in that case, Google Forms doesn't know what to do with those for free response. Imagine you put Transformers and your friend puts Transformers 2 and your friend puts Transformers with the lowercase, then Google Forms doesn't know that those are all the same. So today we're going to try to make those all the same and categorize the results, which I have put in a separate Google Sheet. So this is just those 3 questions, not everybody's home phone number or something like that. However, I haven't changed them. They're pretty ugly, including lots of blanks, lots of nones, lots of cramming several answers into one. So we're going to try to handle that kind of thing with this template that I gave you, reading from the sheet, and then I'm thinking at the end we might write it to a file, but I'm just commenting it out for now. If I run this, I'm going to get the URL, request from the Google servers to give me what they got, just like a browser does when you go there. And then this is turning it into a little list. Here's the magic where we rotate it, because normally a list is all rows, and I don't really want one person at a time. I want all the movies and then separately all the games and so on. And then we can work with them. So let's run that just to see that we got the movies, even though they're quite ugly, including all those blanks and nones and stuff. Okay, this is all the movies, and then if I print the games, we'd have all the games. So how can we work with that? Well, I think probably the easiest and first thing to do is remove all the blanks. I'm going to try to write this in a way that'll work for the other columns too, so if it works on the movies, it can also work on the games, and so on. So I'm going to say, hey, maybe we want to organize this into some better functions, but at the moment, okay, sure. I'm going to say, does this count as something or does this count as nothing? And here's the deal with this problem. This whole thing is about shrinking the problem to handle one thing at a time, because I've got rows and columns. It seems like two-dimensional. All right, two-dimensional doesn't sound like that much. But really it's more, because imagine we got columns, we're going to handle just movies for now. And then we break it down into each cell. We're just going to handle one cell for now. But really that's more than one thing, because we can do it in words, and that's several things. Or we can break it down into characters, and that's even more things. So it kind of reminds me of, do you ever see that example from physics about how our world seems like 3 dimensions, but there are really little curled up dimensions inside if you look farther, like the ant on a wire. I don't know, but I think there's a guy in Stranger Things who shows this, where you can imagine an ant on a wire and it looks like it's just doing one direction, but really it can go around the wire, adding a whole new dimension to its movement. And that's kind of what we see here. All right, rows and columns, sure, but if you narrow it down to a single cell, that's more than just a single thing, because we can break it into words or characters and do more with it. So our goal is to shrink the problem as much as we can. I don't want to deal with the whole table, just a column. Not the whole column, just a cell. Not just a cell, how about a word? And maybe, how about a character? So how can we do that? I'm going to write a function that just handles one cell, and then we'll apply it to the column, and then we'll apply it to the others. So let's say, I'm going to call it something. It's like, is there something in here? Yes or no, okay? And it'll take cell, I guess, because that's what you call one thing in a
At
spreadsheet.
this time, any of the students going with Ms. Whitaker on
I don't
the
know about
field
that.
trip this morning need to leave and meet her at door number 33, please. the culinary field trip, door 33. Thank you.
So we're going to say it's not blank, because if it's blank, I don't want it, right? And then it doesn't include IDK or none or don't or any of those kind of words. And we worked on that in class. We wrote them, so I'm going to copy it from another file I've got. I'm going to say nothing equals these sort of magic words. And they might be missing some, but we can always add to it later. So now I'm going to say not any word in nothing for word in cell. So this is like, hey, are you looking at a none? Well, then you're disqualified. Okay. Are you looking at a don't? Even if it's not the first word, even if it's like, oh, let me tell you some story about why I've never seen a movie, I don't know any, and the don't is way at the end, well, that's fine. We'll still disqualify it. I think you could probably switch it. I think you could say word in cell for word in nothing, because are we going through the cell and checking them against the bad list, or are we going through the bad list and checking them against the cell? It should be fine either way. I remember we had this in one of our exercises with vowels, like do you check the letters of the word with the vowels, or do you check the vowels with the word? Doesn't matter. So now I'm going to say, hey, let's test that out, because who knows if it makes any sense. So let's say print something of blank, which should be false, and then let's test a few. How about a normal string, and then how about one with IDK? So this should say, okay, false because this is bad, true, and then false again. And if that works, then we'll know we're on the right track. It might not be perfect, but we're on the right track. False, true, true. Uh-oh. So why did the IDK not work? Not any word in nothing for word in cell, because I never split. Okay? I never said, oh, split cell to make it separate words. Okay? So that's maybe why it would be helpful to do it the other way around, so that you don't have to worry about splitting it. Because what happens is when you go through a string, it goes one character at a time. And so it's like, oh, is H in there? No, H is not in there. How about now? There we go. Now we got something. Beautiful. So how do I apply that to the whole thing? Now, here's where I'm going to make a separate function. I don't want to do one big blob that has to handle all the columns and the cells and the stuff inside the cell. I'm just gonna, what if I do one? I like, this is a line, and it just does one thing. It says, hey, are you something? Are you a non-blank, non-give up answer for one cell? And then we can say, okay, I think the word I used was sift, meaning like, hey, we're gonna sift out the sand, the garbage, the nonsense. And that applies to a column. And we can use this wonderful Python function called filter. Filter does what it sounds like. It filters things in or out. And you give it a function, and then you give it the stuff to work on. And then it'll say, okay, if you qualify based on this function, you survive to the next round. And if not, you're out of here. So this does the work of looking at everyone in the column. If it passes the test of the function we gave it, then it moves on to the next round. It gets returned, you know. And if not, then it doesn't. So the Python filter seems like a great choice here. Filter is in many programming languages. It's not special to Python. And in fact, a lot of languages use it more than Python does. But let's test this out. Let's say print sift of movies, and I think I have to put a little star here, which I'll talk about later. and then we'll see whether it has like the NAs or the blanks still in there, or whether we got them taken care of. Hey, look at that. Okay, it does have them gone. You can tell because the way I did it with the star looks different, but I can see there are no NAs or no IDKs or something. Okay, so now let's handle the next step, which is how can I do matching for similar but not quite the same. So if I say, hereditary, and somebody else says hereditary with lowercase, are we going to match? Well, again, let's do a single function for a single cell to handle it, convert it, whatever our verb is going to be, and then use that in a separate thing. So I'm going to decide, and we tried this in class, I'm going to go with the first word. So the first word meaning like Deadpool. If you say Deadpool 2 or Deadpool versus Wolverine or Deadpool and Wolverine, is that what it's called? Then you'll be fine because they have the same first word. And in class we also talked about removing numbers, but you don't have to remove numbers if we just do this first word thing. Like Guardians of the Galaxy would match with Guardians of the Galaxy 3, or would match with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, as long as they have that Guardians. And yes, that could have some bad matches, like there could be a movie called Guardians something else, but I think in this case we're going to be okay. So I'm going to make a function called first word, and I'll use cell again because that's what we used in our other one. Now we know it deals with one thing at a time. And so, all right, this is where we do all the string stuff. So if you remember last year, we would ask the user yes or no, and we want to get it if they type capital or lower. We could say dot lower. And so now when they're all compared, they're all the lower version regardless of how they started. So that's good. I want to take out the because a lot of them start with the, and that will mess with our comparison. So we could just replace the with nothing. And we know that the is lowercase because we just lowered it, so we don't have to worry about removing capital does. And then I think I'm going to strip, which takes off spaces at the edges. I don't know if we need that. It might be okay without it, but whatever. And then I'm going to split. So up till now, this gives us a string, this gives us a string, this gives us a string. But now split turns it into a different thing, which is a list. Because split says, hey, give me the quote-unquote words, the things that have spaces between them. And so I want the first one, which is 0. Now that's a line that does a lot, but it's nice to do it all in one, and now we don't have to worry about string nonsense after this. I think there's a danger. What if we split an empty? Is it going to let us do the 0? But we don't have to worry because we've already gotten rid of the empties before we're going to do this. So that's cool. And then how do I apply that to other things? Well, it's going to be kind of like this. I'm going to say convert, which is a bad name. We can find a better name later, but what I mean is we're going to convert them all to a standard form. And this one is different from a filter because we're not removing any. We're not saying, hey, you don't get to go to the next round. We're saying, hey, all of these turn into a slightly different version of themselves. And the word for that is map. So map is just the same pattern. You give it a function and a bunch of things to work on, and it applies that function to all the things. But instead of ruling some out and filtering, it'll just, another word for it is transform. I think C++ uses the word transform for this thing. So if we say map first word onto, we'll use the word onto, like map this onto that column, and they'll give us the first word of every one. How do we know that? Well, let's print convert of sift. Let's do both on movies. Let's see if that works. We might need to put that star in there to print it out in a way that's gonna be readable. Oh, I started 3 parentheses, I only closed 2. I'm gonna go ahead and put that in there too. So, hey, look at that. We've got the first word of everyone. I'm printing somewhere else, I wanna lose that. We've got the first word of everyone, which is pretty good for matching, right? Like Kingsman, and somebody else puts Kingsman, the Golden Circle, or whatever that sequel was called, then they would match because they both have the same first word. Deadpool would match with Deadpool and Wolverine, or would match with Deadpool 2, or it would match with anything that had Deadpool. Grown-ups, if somebody else put Grown-ups 2, then those would match. I think this person did put Grown-ups 2. So let's find those and put them all together. So what I want to do is I want to say, like, okay, can I get, and by the way, we're starting to get a lot of stuff, so I'm going to make a main function. I'm going to make a main that's going to contain all of our actions, because right now, if I have like this and this and this, and they're all floating around, it's hard to keep track. So I'm going to take the constants, which are the things that don't change. We usually put those in all caps. I'm going to put those at the top and say, like, hey, if you want to know what the URL is or the things we're ruling out, we keep it at the top. But then everything else is going to go inside the main. I think that's going to look nice, because when I have a few things, you can just keep them on the screen. But when I have a lot, especially when I have huge text for a video, it's kind of hard to keep track, you know. So look at that. We got little baby functions, 1 line, and then the main's going to have a few lines, but nothing bad. Okay, so you know what? I bet we can delete this. I bet it would work without that stuff. So let's say, as a test, I'm going to print the same thing I just did a second ago, and make sure that I didn't ruin it, because sometimes you think you're rearranging and you end up causing a problem. This is, I hope, not dependent on the order, but if you have things that are dependent on the order, then it might mess it up when you rearrange. No, that looks great. Okay, so what are we going to do here? Well, can we just do this initially? Like when we get them, can we just convert and sift all at the same time? Yeah, sure, we could do that. Maybe something like this. Let's say column, and then we apply that to the columns. I don't know about my parentheses business. See how that works. Oh, yeah, my parentheses are not right. Okay. Oh, my zip star needs to be in there. Okay, beautiful. Now I'm going to say list to turn them into lists. I know that's a bit of work here, but it means that we never have to worry about it again. This is all the work done. Look at that. 1 line, rotate, take out the bad ones, convert it, make them lists. Now we've got pure, lowercase, single word, everything else we can work with from now on. So the next step would be to count these. From collections, import counter, and then let's say counter of movies. Counter is a dictionary, and it does what it sounds like. It counts the most common occurrences. They're not super well ordered, but there's a most common. Let's do like the top 10. Okay, so Deadpool's the winner. Star is next. So Star is Star Wars. We got to make it so that those count. and that'll be the next step. We'll add a function to, well, we have a choice. We could either keep the full title in there somewhere, like when we shrink it down to the first word, we keep the first word and use that for comparison, but also keep the full thing on the side. Or we can just go ahead and shrink it, and then at the end, we just know, we can just make a short little dictionary that says, oh, if you see Star, that means Star Wars. If you see Scott, that means Scott Pilgrim. Okay? Because most of the titles really are one word anyway, like we don't have to transform Deadpool. So it won't be that much. We might have to write like 3 lines or something. Then when we apply it to the games, you'll have to do it again. People that start with Call will have to transform that into Call of Duty. But again, I think most of the games are a single word. You'll see Minecraft, Terraria, Roblox, maybe some others will have to get bumped up. Elden, we'll have to turn that into Elden Ring, and so on. But that's good for now. And look what we got. Very nice little baby functions. 1 line, 1 line, 1 line, 1 line. And then they do their job in the main. We'll worry about pretty output and writing it to a file or something in the next step. Thanks.